Welcome to Worlds Collide, a wrestling card podcast for wrestling fans by wrestling fans, featuring Tony Vella from WrestlingTradingCards.com.
This is like a stock market.
And Zhan Morning from Wrestling with Cards on YouTube. And I'm not saying there's a right or wrong answer, I'm just posing the question. Join them as they navigate the world of wrestling cards, helping you build a bigger and better collection and making some money along the way. What's up, wrestling fans, trading card collectors? Back again, Worlds Collide, and man, do we have to jump through some hoops to get this recording done today. We've got Tony with new equipment having problems. We've got both of our schedules going crazy. We've got weather issues. We've got all kinds of stuff, but we're trying to get it together at a new recording time for both of us to get these things done. Tony, how's it going today? We barely made it.
Yeah, we did. We just barely made it with seconds to spare. Do I sound okay?
I think it sounds great.
Okay, great. So,
what do you guys think? Let us know what you think of Tony's new mic. Does he need to throw it away and go back with the old school headset? Do we need something better? Do we need to go to something worse? Do you guys want like ECW TV quality audio for your listening pleasure?
I can certainly do that. I can handle that. I can just talk right into the laptop if you want me to.
So today, and hey, maybe that's a misconception, kind of what we're talking about today. Is there a misconception that people want really good audio quality when we're talking about wrestling cards? I don't know. But today we're going to be talking about the biggest misconceptions in wrestling card hobby. Tony, this is another one of those topics that you came up with, and I was like, absolutely, let's run with it, because I was like immediately thinking of all different kinds of things. But I'll let you kick things off because it was your idea, and you actually had like 3 things right off the bat you wanted to talk about.
I kind of forget because it's such a long time ago. That's the problem with these topics sometimes is that they come to me at a moment and I just shoot you off a text message. What do you think of this? And you're like, yes, thumbs up, add it to the notes. And I go, okay. And then I add it to the notes and I try to put some stuff in there. And then I go, okay, I won't forget about this. This is something that was pretty fresh on my mind at the time. And then I go, by the time we get around to recording, I go, what was that all about?
Yeah.
I don't remember. I don't know. I think that this topic was brought up about, I was thinking, just going through like, social media feeds, Twitter and whatnot, and kind of going, well, I think people always just think that the only thing worth going after in our hobby, whether it be just to collect or for investment purposes, is Hulk Hogan or The Rock. That's kind of real, like the top tier. That's it. They're the end all be all of our hobby. But I think that's not true. I think that's a huge misconception that, like any other sport we have out there, there's a lot of other great talent and legends. I think I even put in our notes, we have our current day heavyweights. I get all the headlines, but there's a lot more that, as I said, meat in the bone than just your main eventers. And that's kind of what we're going to cover. It's like maybe finding out, some other talents out there that are worth investing in, worth collecting, and it's just not those 2 big guys, You
said it. There's so many more opportunities out there, and I want to take this from just the collecting standpoint. When you look at sports cards, like one thing that drives my interest to continue building the Cross Super Collection is I see these guys out here collecting these random, I'm not gonna say no name, but like lower tier 90s basketball stars or like 80s junk wax era baseball stars that maybe they were on a World Series team, but they weren't like they weren't the Mickey Mantle or the Babe Ruth. They weren't those kind of guys, kind of like we're talking about with Hogan and The Rock. And I see the interest and the passion behind these collections that these people buy of these lower tier players, and that's what drove me to continue going down the path of Cross. Now, obviously, I just like him as a talent. I always have. And now that he's back at WWE, we've discussed that that's an awesome thing. And, people were like, oh, you need to sell. And I'm like, okay, clearly you guys don't know how to collect and how to have fun collecting anything. You're just doing this for the flip. That's okay if that's what you want to do, but that's not what I'm doing. And that's not what I'm talking about specifically with this thing. And wrestling above anything, I've seen the community kind of take off with this. We're starting to see people super collecting people like Omos or Dewdrop, or, maybe they're super collecting indie sets and they're trying to go after as many sets as possible. Just so many different ways of collecting that I am starting to see that aren't Hogan and The Rock. That being said, I think it needs to be bigger. I think we need to see more people getting into the super collecting and finding the rare, with Panini now, rare parallels, low numbered stuff of these other stars, especially the current day. We're starting to see more of that, but we need more of it on top of that.
I agree. I really do. I think it's nice, and especially because of Panini stuff, I think it either forced people to have to rethink on how they're going to collect, whether it be a player collector, super collecting, whatever you want to call it, or I'm just going to go after base sets. And even that's become a kind of a pain in the butt right now because, Select made it really hard for base set collectors with that 400 card base set and how they broke that into tiers. But that's a whole different discussion. So it's just interesting and nice to see that people have kind of like, found other ways to keep interest in the hobby, like you said, by collecting, again, not no names, but,
Right.
lower tier type talent that they enjoy watching or, have some kind of a connection with. And so it's just, there's a lot of other things to go after in our hobby besides just having like, oh, well, I can't afford those Hogans or the Rocks, or you could even throw Andre and Ric Flair in that same category, the same level. There's more to it than just that. I mean, even those names still have lower end type cards you can go after and still
Yep.
collect and enjoy. Sorry, but yes, maybe you have been priced out when it comes to Wrestling All Stars. Sorry, maybe you have been priced out when it comes to the 98 Comic Images Superstars autograph of The Rock. But there's still lots of other cool ways to collect, even from those time frames. And so those guys, the misconception here is those guys aren't the end all be all when it comes to our hobby. There's other ways to enjoy it. And I'm going to segue into it like even buying raw versus graded kind of things. You don't have to just grading isn't the only preferred way in our hobby. There's a lot of guys now who are buying on the cheap, buying stuff raw because prices in our market has kind of gone down. So people are out there being able to pick up some really good deals on things that they thought they couldn't afford. But like, oh my God, I can't afford this. And I like it because it's not graded. So I don't have to worry about that added price
Right.
added into it. So I can just kind of afford to buy raw because that's all I care about. I care about owning it. I care about having that nostalgic feeling of owning that card. So there are other ways to do it. So grading isn't the only preferred method of collecting.
So much to touch on there. I think as far as I actually want to go back a minute. You're talking about base set collecting. Something I've actually heard more people talking about with newer collectors and my eBay store. Quick plug for that. That the sales are showing this, and that is there are people out there that still just want the base card, whether they're set collector, whether they're not. Maybe they're a newer person just getting into the hobby, and they want these lower end things. And whether it is the Andres and the Hogans, or whether it is going after the favorite people that they're currently watching on TV, buying the prism cards of the people like Chad Gable or Otis or something like that. I am seeing more interest in that stuff, but do you think that could be just we're getting more people in?
Yes, and also I think because of the craze, this is something I've been thinking about. Maybe because of the craze now, we're seeing more people getting base set cards signed at meet and greets and stuff.
Good call.
So maybe people are actually going out there going, you know what? That's a cool looking image. It's a cheap base card. I can buy that. I mean, and then you got Fitterman and the whole bit, like with the recent thing
Right.
with the Brock Lesnar signing. They're out there buying, all the Brock, O2 cards they can possibly find.
Yeah,
And
he bought one from my eBay store and it was graded. It was an 8, and I'm like, okay, is he getting the slab signed? Is he cracking this and getting it signed? And
I
then
imagine it's got to be getting it cracked. I'm
yeah,
sure he's going to have it cracked. So, but there's that to contest with too, which is
yeah,
people just going out there and probably. I'm just seeing a lot more of it on social media where people like showing, hey, thank you Shelton Benjamin for signing my card, or
hmm,
those kinds of things, and they're just base set cards. Nothing's really special about the cards, but they got an opportunity to meet that talent and get something that was inexpensive signed. So that could also play into why we're seeing a lot of base singles being sold too, because there's a lot more meet and
yeah.
greets going on. A lot more collectors are getting into that.
And it's super super cheap way to do it. So
Yep.
the other thing I want to touch on before I get back to grading, you mentioned that some people look at this and they're like, well, I can't afford the Hogan or the Andre or the Ric Flair. Do you wonder if I think this sometimes that some of these people maybe saying that and maybe looking at these because that's what everybody else is doing, not because they necessarily want to collect it or buy it. It's just that's what everybody else is doing. That's what I have to do.
Yeah, and that's not a really good way to look at it, I think. I mean, you don't
No,
have to follow. Don't be a sheep. You follow what you feel makes you feel. Sorry, you follow what you feel makes you feel the best.
yep,
And if you have an attachment to Hogan and Flair and Andre, then by all means go down that lane and collect what you can, obviously reasonably within your budget, afford to go buy. But if you also like, hey, I like Riddle. Hey, I like
pick
whoever,
somebody.
anybody. I'm an Orange Cassidy guy. Whatever the case may be, go after that person and collect them because there's a lot of things that can be very affordable and across the board. So just because everybody else is saying Hogan and Andre and Rock and Flair and whatever the case may be, doesn't mean you have to.
Right.
Yeah, you know those names. Maybe you weren't a fan of theirs. Maybe back in that time you were a Bushwhacker fan. Maybe you were a Rockers fan or whatever the case may be. Go after those guys. Go after guys that touch you in a certain way that make you remember that time frame of when you were loving watching wrestling. So that's the whole thing about wrestling anyways. It's so nostalgic. Takes you right back to a moment or an era. And these guys are, again, we're going to repeat ourselves a lot here. They're not the end all be all. So just don't follow everybody else because they're going on this route and saying, oh, I see David Peck's collection and Rob England's collection. They have such amazing collections. I want that too. I need to get that. No, you don't need to get that. You can go get what you like that's specific to you.
Yeah, I say take what they're doing, learn from it, and apply it to how you do your thing.
Correct.
Yep. And going back to the gradings, I think really the grading is beneficial for two things. Number one, if you're doing set registry, I'm going to say three things: set registry, validation to make sure you don't have a fake autograph or a fake card, and then the third thing is strictly for profitability. If you're getting it because, I mean, I'm not going to lie, you can take a $10 card based on what it is. You can get a 9 or a 10 on it, and you can triple your money just by putting it in a piece of plastic slab based on the grade. And I see a lot of more modern collectors seem to think that grading is the end all be all. And then some of the super vintage people think that it's the end all be all. But there is this middle ground where not everything has to be graded. Like, I don't know that I have any carrying cross stuff that's graded, just being on, like, maybe one or two things. But I'm not grading any of that. I've seen some people out there putting together really awesome, like, modern shiny PCs where they're all in one touches and they're still in a really nice, like, Pelican style case. And it's got the foam in it. It's really nice looking, but it's all one touches. None of it's graded. So I'm with you. Like, it's grading's there. It's always going to be there. It's important, but it is not the end all be all when it comes to collecting. And I think a lot of times people will miss out on opportunities for cards just because it's not graded or it's not a 10, it's something like that. So.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be for you. I mean, if obviously if you're in it for just for investment and trying to profit off of the flip, then obviously that's kind of where the direction you're going to go.
Sure.
So maybe you're going to go out but even then, I still disagree. Even then, you're probably still going to go out and want to buy raw anyways because you're trying to find a deal that you can, like you said, find a $10 card and hopefully get it graded with a nice grade if you have a keen eye for that kind of thing, and then flip it for triple the value probably.
Right.
But there is that middle ground. It's not either this way or that way. So we know, we've talked to people who absolutely despise grading and others who live by it. So, but there's a larger group of people who live right in the middle of those two sides.
That's me.
Yep.
All right. The next thing we're going to talk about, and this is something I actually saw a reply to one of our podcasts on, which is when we talked about the rise of autograph cards, and the misconception being that autograph cards are like the safest place to put your money. And that's just not the case on so many levels.
So many levels, because I think that most of the autograph cards, as we've seen over the years, and we've talked about it many times on this podcast, on various other podcasts, where we've said that it's just almost criminal where we see certain autograph cards for almost nothing. Like you can pick them up for 5, 7, 10, 15, 20 bucks, which is basically nothing in the grand scheme of, the hobby itself. And it's just because they're autographs doesn't make them the end all be all of what you should be collecting of that particular said person.
Yeah, like I can tell you firsthand when I buy out a lot of collections or I buy bulk from people. Some of the listeners of the show actually I bought from. There will be autographs in there, whether it's sticker, whether it's on card, whether it's a parallel. There will be autographs in there of some like Hall of Famers, some decent named modern stars, but they're just thrown in bulk because they don't have the level of respect. Like I know I got a Booker T in one of them that I bought. Booker T is a well-known guy,
Yep.
and apparently he's just, not like he's not respected enough that people wouldn't put an autograph of him in a bulk buy. You know what I'm saying? So the people out there that are saying buy the autographs of the Hall of Famers, sure, if that's what you collect, but from a strictly investment standpoint, it's not always the best way to go.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if that's somebody that you're collecting, you PC for whatever reason, whether it be of the attachment to them or you like the way they sign their name. I think isn't Ryan going after all the beefcake cards?
Yeah.
I mean, and he's having a lot of fun doing that, and he's getting them almost relatively inexpensive because,
Right.
I mean, it's a legendary guy, Brutus Beefcake. I mean, hello, first ever. This is your card episode,
Hmm.
and it's just inexpensive, but autographs at the end of the day just aren't always the best investments. I mean, obviously we see a lot of shiny stuff and low number, serial numbered stuff, even short print stuff that's not numbered. We see all that kind of stuff, and those are going for bigger money. And parallels are what's driving the current modern product mostly. And but autographs again
Well,
just
even
aren't.
like people aren't, I'm going to say this and people are not going to be happy with me, but Hogan, Flair, Undertaker, these guys are like people say when they're gone, the values are going to go astronomical. 100% agree. That
Sure.
being said, it may not do what you think because these guys are literally signing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of things. It's not
Yeah,
like,
there's no short print of these guys'
yeah,
autographs out there at all. Like, there's nothing rare about their stuff. The ones you're going to be looking for that are rare, Andre, that's rare. So
yes,
if anybody of that, as we first started talking about misconceptions of Hogan and Rocks and Andres and
The
Flairs,
Rock,
kind of
that's another one that's going to be rare too because he just
yeah,
doesn't sign.
and, unless something happens the next year or two or three, whatever, he'd start signing a bunch of stuff and said, you know what, screw it, I'm going to sign a bunch of stickers and put them out
Right.
there. I mean, for now, he's kind of in that Andre realm where it's like there's not a lot of stuff out there with him, certified out there that's signed by him, and Andre even being less. So
Yeah,
those are kind of guys where autograph wise, yeah, those guys are kind of going to be worth a
sure.
lot more.
Yeah, and like I said, the when Flair, um, Hogan, Undertaker, I use those examples. When they do pass away, it's like I said, these people who are saying the value is going to go through the roof, they're not wrong. It's just that it may not be as much as you think based on the volume that's going to come out because, they'll sign anything.
Yep, and it's that first 72 hours. I know somebody had
Yeah.
mentioned something on Twitter recently came up about it might have been Inoki who just
Yes.
passed away,
Hmm.
and people were like, "Oh my God!" People are throwing up autographs and trying to. I don't understand why people want to capitalize on someone's death. That's always been the case long before any of these people
Yeah.
were myself was even born.
Yeah.
Things of value of collectibles. Traditionally, in the first 72 hours of someone passing is when something peaks. Then it kind of then it plateaus at a certain level, and that's kind of the floor level of where it stays at from that point forward.
Right.
It happened when Michael Jackson passed away. It happened. I saw it when it happened with when China. I saw it when Prince. All the different things. So it's kind of what usually happens, and here we are. We're just a couple days now removed from Inoki passing away by the time we're recording this, and you're going to see that probably starting to flatline a little bit as far as no, I'm sorry, that's a badly, but yeah, to just level out, to level out. That was I didn't mean it that way, to level out, and it's just that's what people do. Collectors are always going to do that. There's going to be sellers always trying to capitalize on someone passing away. That's just how it's always going to be. You're never going to stop them. Never going to stop
Well,
them.
we touched on this too, but before we move on to the next topic, let's touch on this real quick. You mentioned Inoki. That's a little bit of a harder autograph to get too than
Yep.
say. But then you have to also look at, okay, we talked about this in a previous episode. We're talking about it now as far as like the best quote investment. While Inoki may be rare, the mass mainstream of the hobby, do they even really know who Inoki is? I mean, the diehard wrestling fans do, but the people out there that are, going to be willing to spend six figures on a card, are they going to be ever looking at Inoki? I say
Yeah, I
probably
mean, you're
not,
probably
unfortunately.
not. Yeah, your big Sasha Banks super collectors, or your Becky Lynch super collectors, or your Roman Reigns super, guys of modern stuff. They only know the name; they don't know the game.
Right. That's a great way to put it. So the next topic up is there's not enough demand for wrestling. Nobody collects wrestling cards. I'm not going to carry wrestling cards at my shop. I'm not going to have wrestling cards at my, table at a card show. There is just not enough demand. Thoughts?
Um, yes, and slightly no. The slightly no part is because, I mean, I don't go to a lot of card shows, but I've been, we see things being posted up on social media, especially within the wrestling trading card community. We're seeing people comment like, "Hey, nice to see that there's more cards now. There's more wrestling cards being shown at some dealers. Not a lot, but more than I'm used to seeing." This year at the National, that was for me. I'm probably not the best person to probably weigh in on past and present, but my understanding was that there was a decent number of wrestling cards being shown, mostly vintage. That's where most of these type of collectors are going to be at from the National, I guess. Very very little modern. Most of that was just Prism stuff. But it was nice to see that there was some representation of wrestling cards there.
Yep.
But on the flip side too is that no, there needs to be more of it. There's the demand for wrestling cards, I guess, isn't there from the masses, not like basketball and baseball and football, but it's slowly climbing. I mean, we've been talking about it for months and months and months since Panini got in the game, but the Panini, the Prism,
That
issue,
whole, yeah.
it did, for good, bad, or indifferent, it did shine a light on our hobby greater than ever before, and we're still kind of seeing some benefits from that, I think. I don't know, thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think of all of the fringe things that are not the big three, baseball, basketball, football, hockey's always going to have like a diehard fan base, but I think
Mm-hmm.
wrestling is kind of like that. But it seems like we've got more people into wrestling and they've stayed and they've found their own lanes, as opposed to a lot of these other fringe things, whether it's F1 or Marvel. We're now starting to see that, yeah, there are people sticking with it, but the hype and the dollar amount and the collectors out there, it's really starting to go down because they see that the money's not there anymore, and then they realize, you know what, I was actually only in this for the money and the mainstream appeal for what was going on at the time. And I feel like wrestling card collectors are just like, man, this is fun. I'm going to stay. I'm going to keep doing this. I'm going to keep finding these new ways to collect my favorite wrestlers, because once again, I think that's the biggest missed opportunity for people. That I'm not saying you have to collect wrestling cards if you're a dealer or a store, but something that I just really think they're not thinking about is the longevity of wrestlers and the diehard, the diehard collector base. They'll spend tons of money, in wrestling fans in general. They want to talk about these worldwide audiences. Professional wrestling, it's like one of the best worldwide audiences you could have outside of Disney or Marvel or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got like the fact that they're not going to get hurt, but we've seen time and time again where controversy comes up on some of these big stars. Oh, their cards are going to go down. Actually, they go up. Like these are just opportunities that these people are missing out on by saying, I'm not going to handle wrestling cards at my table, at my store, because there's not enough demand. You're right, there may not be demand like they're thinking, but I've also seen people that are just like, they buy out collections, but if there's wrestling or Pokemon or something in there, they're not going to mess with it because they don't see opportunity. I'm just like, you guys are missing the boat.
Yeah, I agree. The beautiful thing about wrestling too is that no season, so there's
Yep.
it's always constantly going on, and especially if you're a dealer trying to sell, and you said, I'm gonna have a little, like they'll have that 5,000 count box of all their miscellaneous stuff, and it's usually kind of categorized by type, and so that W's for wrestling is in that last row towards the back, and as they have it all marked there, but you know there's just a talent there that you can never go wrong with some of these guys. You're not going to go wrong with your legends. Like, I don't care if it's just Hogan and Flair's like that. And then again, there feeds into the topic here, which is the misconception that that's the only thing that's worth any money, which is not true. It's just I don't have to worry about in sports. We've talked about it time and time again where people get injured. All of a sudden their value goes down because they're not producing for their team, and then some no name guy, especially like in football,
Yeah.
big name running back, he's consistently been like this good seller of product, all of a sudden gets injured, and some backup guy who's a no name really comes in, has this monumental game of like rushes for 200 yards, 3 touchdowns. Like, I'm going to start investing in him, and It's just
And the next
it's
week,
up and
that
down.
guy's hurt.
Yeah, and then he's hurt, or
Yeah.
the other guy comes back, and they got to get rid of him. Now he's got some trade value, like all this crap going on. And so wrestling is not kind of like that way. Yeah, it's storyline driven, but even in bad storylines, fans tend to still stick with their guy or gal, even in bad storylines, in hopes of seeing them get turned around to something else. That's just the thing too. We have so many different characters to invest in stuff like that. But the profit margins, as I think we're going to segue into the next part, it's just it's probably not there for the dealers in their mind, and I disagree with them because
you've actually. I'll just let you go with this because you've said this on numerous shows in the past about how the margins are absolutely there.
they're absolutely there, and in some cases, I think they're probably even greater when it comes to something, as you call it, a fringe market of like wrestling, which is we want it to be more mainstream, but it's still kind of on the fringe. I think even the ROIs are probably even higher there in wrestling based on what your investment is on some of these cards.
Yeah.
I could take $1 card that's probably going to be sitting in some dealer's box who has no idea that it's just wrestling, and I can flip it for 10, $15. It's because the wrestling card community knows that that's a good card. It's crazy to me to think that people would look at wrestling cards and go, well, there's not enough zeros in it and I don't want to deal with it. But when the percentages are there as far as what I can buy into and what I can sell, it's equal to, if not greater than every other sport, I think. Personally, I mean, just looking at what we see online, seeing guys take things and flipping things, we're like, well, you know what? I'm probably into this for like actually pennies because I bought it in a lot, or I'm into it for 50 cents because I bought it in some stack sale online somewhere. And then I turned around, I went and got it graded and I got a 8 or a 9 or, good for you, a 10. And now I'm getting 30, 40, $50 for it. That's a huge profit margin.
Right. Yeah. And that's, there's people out there saying that they're having problems in the sports car market right now, making any money on anything. And I wonder if it's just a work ethic. I say that because a lot of these guys out here say, "Oh, I'm on the grind, I'm on the hustle, I'm flipping, blah blah."
Yeah, but they're used to buying almost a sure thing. Like, oh, I'm going to buy the Trevor Lawrence cards because I know he's a sure thing right now. I can flip him right now. I'm low invested in him. I can still go out and flip him, and I can make that $50 profit, $100 profit, $200, whatever it is. Right? But those same percentages exist in wrestling on a more consistent basis.
Yep. You just have to do more of it, and I think that's maybe what the problem is. Like they think that they're too good to mess with these sub $5 cards. That if it's not a $100 plus card, it's not worth my time. And once again, another missed opportunity. Like I found example I can give at a local card store. I was looking through their 50% off thing, and I ended up buying some sports stuff to flip because I knew what the value was. But in there was a finest gold Shayna Baszler for $3. Nice. And I know it's Shayna Baszler, but that's a minimum of like a $5 card.
Yeah, so, I mean, if you sold it for $6, you doubled your money.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's like, well, it's only for $3, man. I can't feed my family off of $3. But can you feed your family? Maybe pay some bills if you had like, I don't know, a couple hundred of those $3 profits.
Exactly. That's the point right there that I'm always trying to drive home is. Like, there's these people out there that say, yeah, I'm hustling and grinding and all stuff. I'm like, but are you really when you're only selling one card a month? Like, you might make more money than me, but I'm actually making higher margins. I just have to do it in volume.
Yep.
So, and I say that, you've talked about it before. I want to put, I'll put this in the same thing. Non-sport, Pokemon, you've talked a lot about non-sport, but Pokemon, all these other fringe things, there's just as much margin and all that stuff as there is, if not more, than sports cards. And wrestling is at the top of that list. Yep,
I agree with you 100%. I will die on that hill, sir.
Me too. And speaking of dying, we're going to die probably before we get off this episode. This is the end, as Jim Morrison said. This is the end. All right, guys, thanks for listening. Tony, let everybody know where they can find you. Anything else you've got going on you want to promote?
WrestlingTradingCards.com. It's just this little website that's been around for a couple months. Give it a check over, see what you think about it. But you can find all information about us and contact us through all social media, all found at the bottom of every single page on WrestlingTradingCards.com. Soon to celebrate not its couple month anniversary, but 20th anniversary coming up.
Not 20 months, 20 years.
And by the way, speaking of anniversaries too, you got the wrestling card price guide. He is now launched. He launched the online version of it in 2012. So he's coming up.
There
This
we
is going to
go.
be it's his 10th anniversary.
Yep.
So you got the 1-2 punch right there of Wrestling Card Price Guide and WrestlingTradingCards.com, always providing you the most information possible when it comes to the hobby of wrestling trading cards, checklists, information, images, all that good stuff. So check
The
us out,
Road
man.
Warriors of the wrestling card community.
There you
The
go.
Legion of Doom. I'll just be Paul Ellering, or you can have Chuckster be Paul Ellering.
Yeah, it's a toss up. Yeah,
Let's make.
depends on.
It's probably Chuckster because he actually contributes to your guys' sites more. I'm like doing my own thing.
Yeah, just do your own thing. You rebel.
Speaking of that, you can find my stuff, Wrestling with Cards, on YouTube, Wrestling with Cards, the podcast. Check out the links in the show notes to everything Tony's got going on, everything I've got going on. If you enjoyed this video and it brought you some value, again, please hit subscribe wherever you're listening to this on whatever podcast platform you're on. Hit that subscribe button. Share it with a friend. We talk about growing the wrestling card community. That's one way you can do it, is spreading this show with other people out there.
Mm-hmm.
Wrestling fans, sports card collectors, even people who are already in wrestling cards. We've, found, Tony, I don't know about you. I've had people DM me and they're like, hey, I don't talk a lot about my collection, but I've actually been collecting wrestling cards for like 30 years and I just found your show. And I'm like, awesome. Like, whether they agree with us or disagree with us, I'm glad we can give them something to listen to that is within their niche of the hobby.
Yeah, and if you got, if you're a collector, you obviously know other collectors, and if you know someone who's already kind of like, you know what, I'm going to kind of give this wrestling cards a shot, share it with them. Go there and say, hey, this is a great tool to use, hopefully, that you can get some information from and help you with your collecting and wrestling cards.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for listening. Again, hit that subscribe button. And until next time, keep collecting, keep having fun. We'll see you.
Wrestling